Welcome to Crafting with Kathy. Today I'm going to be working with some alcohol inks and we're going to be creating a Wispy Flower artwork. I'm working on gloss card and I've got that already taped with a bit of double-sided tape onto my Lazy Susan. I like to work with a Lazy Susan. When I'm doing wispy work, I do move my air source from side to side, but I also like to be able to move my card around to get to better angles easier. So with this one, we're going to be using a couple of different tools as well. We'll be using the airbrush and we're also going to be using a straw to be able to get the different shapes and to move the inks the way we want to. To start with though, I'm just going to put where we want our main flower to be. I'm going to start putting in some ink because I need to give it time to dry, and I'm actually also going to give it a bit of a dry with the heat gun, and might do another little one down there. So let's just go over those with our heat gun and get them drying. Normally I'd leave them just to sit for a few minutes to dry, but because I know that we're going to be pushing ahead to try and fit all this card in one go, I just need to encourage them. I'm just going to add a little bit of the Sangria there as well, and we'll leave that to dry too. Right, now we can start working on our lower part of the picture. This is where we're going to add some greenery. So I'm just going to pop on some of the lime green and some alcohol, and this is where we're going to use the airbrush. So I'm going to start off blowing it on me a little bit so I can see that I haven't got too much pressure, and we'll blow our leaves up a bit, and then also using the wispy technique, blow back onto itself. Now I don't mind in some spots if I get a little bit of sort of sharper movements, but then in other spots I want it really soft. So let's come back here and make this one softer. Just again start the airbrush on me so I know I've got it really gentle. I want some lines in there. I'm trying to create the look of leaves and foliage, so I want some lines to break it up. I don't want just one blob of colour. So let's try and move that one up a little bit. Even a few tendrils like that coming up are going to be okay, but then maybe that one's a little bit too solid. Let's just wispy it a bit. That's better. Now that sort of bit there, that's fabulous. That's really what we're wanting to get. Let's pop a little bit more of our lime green on, and I think my paper moved. Let me just press it down there. It's going to be easier if the paper stays where I've put it. Much easier. Then pop a little bit of alcohol just along the edge there and actually just push it back right to the edge of the card. Okay, let's get our gentle work happening. And move it up into the alcohol, then move it back onto itself. If your inks have dried, let the alcohol sit there for a moment. Oh, I'll leave that, that's a great leaf shape. I think I need a little bit more in there. Just one drip. Just watching where it spreads first. So you can move it down to the base of the card. Decide if we need to bring it up at all. Maybe a little bit. So let's again get the air going gentle. Push it up. Move it back down again. So let the alcohol, if you need to, if the inks have dried a bit, let the alcohol sit there for a moment. Now this is what we're doing here deliberately, is letting the alcohol inks dry together, so that then when we put the drops of alcohol on, we wait for a moment for it to react, and then we'll get some great patterns happening. Now a bit firmer with the air, and we'll push that down right to the base of the card. Bit of alcohol in there if it doesn't want to move where I want it to move to. Just say, hang on, I'm calling the shots here. You go where I want you to go to. And as anyone who's worked with alcohol inks will know, that doesn't always work. Usually they tell you where they want to go. So I'm letting it come up a little bit more on this side of the page. A little bit of air. Just move some fronds up there. Good. Now I could work with the airbrush when I start to do the petals, but I'm actually using a little bit better with the straw for that. Probably a mixture of a straw and my air blower. We'll see how we go. Okay, now our top petals are looking nice and dry now, and that's looking like some foliage down the base, so that's good. I'll pop my airbrush to one side, and I'm just going to switch it off so it doesn't keep making noises on us. And let's grab our straw and start with the top flower. Now we're going to work with around the edge of it and then gradually work closer to the dark, so we actually get layers of petals with different colours coming through. And when I put my ink, my alcohol on, I leave it sit for a moment so it dissolves that bit. And then we blow out a nice wispy petal shape. Now my next bit of alcohol, I don't put next to that or the two would mix together. I go a little bit further along, let it sit, let it spread a bit. And you actually, as you start close and then as your petal forms, you lift up. Let's do our next one a bit further along. So we work around our flower. Doesn't look like a flower at all yet, but that's okay. Now I can come back. Now those two have dried there. I can come back and do one in between them. You can see when it's ready because you can see the inks underneath starting to move. So when I first put the blob of alcohol on, you don't see anything, and then see how it's starting to move, the colours are changing. That's when you know you can work with it. Okay, now while that one dries a bit, let's do a little bit on these smaller ones. So same process. Right, now let's come back to our main flower. Looks like I may have dripped a bit of alcohol on there, a bit of water maybe. Let me just get my paper towel up. Don't want water there, we just want alcohol. Right, let's try that again. Okay, so we'll start again. Now this time, before I worked right on the edge, pardon me, of the coral colour. Now I'm going to come in a little bit closer in here. And we'll do a petal, so we're doing shorter ones now. That's looking pretty. Let's add a few to this one. Now this is going to be a bit of a giveaway because you're going to start to see the dark colour, the sangria, move into the other colours. Go to this one. Isn't it lovely, the lines you get through the petals? And I just want to break up that sangria a bit, so I'm just scruffing the alcohol into it a bit. Nice. Okay, a little bit more on this one, and then we'll go back to our main one. Okay, let's go back to this one. So now we're going to really work the edge of that sangria. So I'm putting the alcohol right on that edge there. Let it sit for a moment. Now making sure I don't go right next to that petal. So as you lift up, your petal will become narrow. So as I lift away from it, the petal will become narrower. Yeah, let's do on that side. If you're not quite happy with the petal, quickly blow it back into the flower. Okay, just play with this one a little bit. Now I'm not happy with that line on that one, so I'm going to blow that one out a little bit more. That's a nice petal shape. See if we can get one out this side. Excellent. I'm going to come back in and add a few more. I'm going to take a risk and put a little bit more sangria on here. But we're just going to let that sit there for a moment. How's that sangria going? Okay, let's start adding. I think I'm like a trumpeter. I've got to get the spit out of it. How gross is that? Oh, that's beautiful. Blowing that back into the centre a bit. So you can see those nice petal shapes forming. I think we need a couple more here, and then we might start putting some stems in. So we're doing the stems. We could do those with, we could stamp them on. There's some good stems in some of the Alcholol sets of stamps. We could also, so we could use, if we're stamping them on, we could use a Memento ink or Archival or the Catherine Pooler black ink. Oops, that's a bit heavy. Let's take it back a little bit. Okay, I think I'd like one more long petal down there, but who knows if I can get that to go just where I want it. That's it. It's not exactly the shape I want, so I want to keep playing a bit. Matthew's just letting me know how I'm going for time. We don't want this video to run over, but I want to keep playing. Sorry, Matt. Let's pop another bit of coral in there. It is a technique to practice to try and get different petal shapes, because you can make different flowers depending on, I'm trying to create flowers where the petals come down a little bit, but you can certainly create them where your petals go out more like this one, where they're going out in all directions. You can create more like rose type shapes. Right, let's take this one and give him a little petal that way. You'll notice that I sit back each time before I blow again. I don't want to be breathing in the alcohol fumes. I don't want to have my straw right down close, blow, and then put more alcohol and breathe in through the straw there. So I put the alcohol on, which with this technique it's good because you're letting it sit for a moment. So you're not so tempted to, but let it sit and then take my breath in. And then come and do the blow. So you're not risking breathing in all that alcohol ink. That one's starting to look like a lily. I thought I was going for daisies, but you know, I think we're getting lilies. Okay, so let's just start doing a bit of painting. Now I'm going to be using a drag or rigger brush and a little bit of black gouache. So I'm just going to pop that onto my craft mat. And then just pick up a little bit with my brush. So I'm just imagining where our stems might come for our flowers. Picturing that. I'm going to put some leaves on that one maybe. So of course, as I said, you could use stamp sets to stamp in some stems and some leaves, or you can just pop them on with some paint. Definitely up to what you feel more confident with. Now, one thing I often do when I'm doing painting is actually deliberately change the weight on your brush a few times so that your lines become not quite so even, and that way if you're a little bit off it doesn't matter, and I think it gives things a little bit more interest. So yes, if you just, as you're painting, just put a bit more pressure on and then lift your brush, or you can actually sort of roll your brush a little bit It's going to give you just that little bit more interest going. Now we're just going to bring up something for this one. And then we might pop in just a few other points of interest. Okay, now we do need to match a few more little leaf things. So if you've got it on one, you need to put it onto a couple of others. This is not, I'm not trying to paint exactly. This is just adding little bits of dots here and there, just breaking up those lines a bit. Okay, I'll show you looking back around where you can see it a bit better. Right. Now the other thing that we can do is come in and actually make more of a flower centre there. So have a look at where you think your flower centre might be. This one, it's right in the middle. So I could add in, and I'll just put a little bit of alcohol on my craft mat and using another fine brush, or I could use a ball-ended stylus. We can just come in and just add some dots. And it won't look like much to start with, but as that ink starts to react with the alcohol and move, we're starting to create a little dotty pattern there. Let's grab a little bit more alcohol. I'm going to start adding our dots up here. Now do try and do the dots apart from each other. If you do them together, they'll just swell out into like a blob that way. If you want them to stay dots, do a dot and then, sorry Matthew. So yeah, if you do two dots next to each other when they're wet, instead of getting a circle, you'll get the two dots joining together and making a blobby shape, which is fine if that's what you want. But normally with something like this, you're wanting to create more of a dotty pattern. So we want to do our dots separate from each other. That way they have a chance to dry, and then we can overlap one and you'll get a dot within a dot. How are you going over here? Little flower. Getting some good dots on this one. So I'm picturing a flower head there with the petals that we're seeing here are ones that would be folding to the back of the flower, and then we're seeing the main flower coming down. See, I did have a bit of an idea what I was trying to create when I started. And this one's the same. This one's got the flower centre is up the top of the flower, whereas this one we're looking more at all the petals going out from the centre. So you can create a little dotty pattern that way. The other thing that we can do is also use a Posca paint pen to add in extra dots. I think I'm going to go with the yellow. So we're just going to add some extra little yellow dots in here. Bigger dots put a bit of pressure, little dots just do a slight touch. Now this one is a bigger pen, the smaller nib will give you more control. Let's make that one a bit bigger. Is that creating like a flower type top shape? Do the same over on this one. Actually, let's change to the pink one, just so that you can see the finer nib and what a difference that makes. this one we'll do a bit of both. So do a nice big yellow one there. Some smaller pink ones around it. We could also use something like liquid pearls. Would work well as well. So you can start to see now the petal shape, the flower shape happening. Well, happened. I'm not 100% sure that I've got that shape happening right there. That's better, isn't it? More of an ellipse. Okay, so there's our flower card, flower painting. Just lift it off the Lazy Susan there, where I've stuck it down really well, and move that out of the way. I'm going to actually move it down over the black of the tablecloth there. That means Matthew's got to chase it with the camera. Didn't give him any warning about that, so just letting him refocus there. We've got a bit of light flare happening on that, so I'll just lift it up a bit. And you can see our artwork. So it is a beautiful technique to practice, but it's good if you can let those inks, those first blobs of inks dry, and you need to have a softer colour and a darker colour so that the darker colour starts coming through the lighter colour petals. So that's the difference between, you can see the greenery down the bottom. It doesn't actually look like specific leaves, but it's just creating the impression of a bit of ground there. And then our soft wispy flowers. So I hope you'll have a go with this one. As I said, it does take a little bit of practice just to get those petal shapes happening, but it's a lot of fun. Thank you for watching.